All right, so it's week 3 of small group,
Yes.
and this week our title is halftime because we're kind of in the middle.
Yes, we are in the middle, and in the story of the gospel story, it's kind of at a very it's a very important time in the passages that we'll be talking about. So yeah, it's I would say middle is a good
Yeah.
good place for it.
Well, and since we started the conversation earlier in this week, it provoked Daniel and I to both separately research like inspirational halftime speeches because you know you go back to the locker room and usually you have a moment in time where a coach or a player or somebody says something. Do you want to talk about your clip?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I actually looked at a lot of different clips, and I found something that was interesting. There's not that many serious halftime clips to find because there's a lot of pregame ones.
Yeah.
So I found a really great one of my favorite movies, Hoosiers.
It was good.
Yeah, and it's awesome, and you can find a lot from the Hoosiers movie, but they don't have anything. I don't think anything from the halftime and it just made me think about that. Is it because I had a hard time? You might have had an easier time.
No, I didn't.
I think there's a reason for that.
I do too. Now that you said that, I think that is more sacred time.
Exactly. It's shouldn't be a camera in it.
No, because you want it to be authentic. Not that pregame isn't authentic,
Right.
but pregame, there are no expectations because you have not even begun the game.
No, you haven't.
And so halftime, you're either on a high or you're on a low.
Yeah.
Or you're antsy because you're like straight in the middle.
Hey, straight out nervous.
Yeah.
And I've been there. All the sports I played, football is the one locker room time that I remember more than any time, and that's partly because we had to. And I remember the state championship game that we had my senior year. It was a bad locker room experience because we were getting blown out. We
But did your coach was he mean or?
No, it was normally when we would go to halftime, we were excited about the opportunity to win the game.
Right.
Usually we were in the game. This was the first time that whole season, my senior season, that we were truly getting beat. And we again, it was the state championship. We had gone through playoffs, and these boys were just bigger. I swear they were all on steroids. But that's just my own personal opinion. I won't mention the name of the school, but but I remember it being so stressful going into halftime.
Right.
But the amazing thing about that experience for me was the coach did handle it really well, and he made it all about reminding ourselves what it took to get there, and it was a win no matter what, and just have fun. This is your last opportunity.
Right.
And it was the last time I ever played. I played one other game, but it wasn't for my team. It was a whatever. So it was our last game, my really last game playing ever, and so he made it about that, and that I'm probably messing up your mic by doing that. Sorry about that.
I was about to swat your hand.
I'm just being real. So but the point is that it was a memorable experience, but it was very sacred.
Right. And it's I think it's sacred for different reasons. It's sacred because of the people in which you are sharing that time with. And it's also sacred because you've gotten to a point where your emotions have taken hold of you versus before it's strategic and you're trying to, accomplish something, and it's all the emotions are exactly the same. Everybody's excited or whatever, maybe a little nervous, but come halftime, you're trying to figure out how are you going to depend on the people in this locker room or in the scripture, the people around this table in different ways.
Right. It's all about the best coaches are the coaches that handle the halftime in the best ways. If you ever watch Clemson play last year, they always went into halftime, whether they were down or ahead, and they came out a better team.
Right.
And the reason is that the best coaches are the ones that make the best adjustments
Right.
during that time period. And so it's serious time. You have a period where you're making adjustments, and then you're reminding them what you've done to get to this point and what you need to do to finish it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but adjustments is key.
Well, and I think you're going to kill me because I cannot think of the head coach for Clemson.
Mhm.
What is his name?
It's
Tell me, because I know it.
it's Dabo.
Dabo.
Sweeney.
So
Everybody says his last name different, but Dabo.
the thing about him, though, is we all know he's a Christian.
Yeah, he is.
And he's very comfortable talking about his faith. He's very comfortable praising God in front of other people. And I think that is pivotal of how he treats and talks to and reacts and reflects in those moments of halftime versus another coach.
Yeah, I always joke that he's a good Methodist
Mm-hmm.
because he expects perfection out of his players.
Right.
But that perfection isn't individual perfection. It's everybody together giving their absolute best.
Sure.
It's not saying you're perfect. It's saying you're striving to do the very best.
Yeah.
And he is a Christian, and that understanding is part of his faith, and he does not back down. He's gotten a lot of heat for that,
Mm-hmm.
but players really respond to that. Clemson has a very strong Christian community within their football team because of that.
You know, it's interesting because last week we highlighted the Michigan State game and the tragedy that happened on the court with the player falling. What's interesting in the two different aspects is I guarantee, I don't know that coach either, the Michigan State coach.
Yeah.
But they really honed in the fact that he was emotional because he's a hard, like very stoic and almost mean type coach.
Yeah.
That I bet you his halftime speech still wasn't probably very inspirational, even after living through that tragedy. Like, it's interesting how you can take both of those scenarios and you want this one to turn out better, but it probably won't because that's the type of character he is. And if I don't want to make assumptions, but I would imagine that he probably is not as strong as his faith as Sweeney is.
Possibly. I don't know much about it. I think it's Izzo, and those are Michigan State fans will be beating me if I got it wrong, but I think it's Izzo. Yeah, I don't know, but you're right. I think you make a good point. You could tell that. I mean, I know that if Sweeney was in that interview right before the game, or for the halftime, it'd have been a different. He would have said yes.
Absolutely.
Whereas Izzo was trying to say no, that has nothing to do. And the reason they do that as a coach is that what gets them to where they are is their game plan, and they don't want to go away from their game plan. So if something like that happens, they're going to say, well, we're just going to put the next player in, and that's what they're supposed to do, and all that kind of stuff. But with faith, we should be more like the Sweeneys of the world and say, yes, we have a game plan, but we also have faith, and we also have a support that's beyond us.
Right.
And I think that's important. I mean, not just playing a game, but in life and in our texts. I think that's what it's all about. I mean, we've all heard these texts many times before because it's the communion liturgy.
Right.
Pretty much.
And that's what I think is so neat is we get to kind of put a different spin on it and kind of think of it in a different way. And certainly on Sunday morning, we're going to dive deeper into this text and talk about how sitting around that table turned into Jesus's halftime and really trying to figure out like how can we take that and relate it into our own lives? What does that look like?
Well, I can't help but to already do that, and I don't want to spoil Sunday, but one of the things that is in my head right now is that it's interesting that we're doing this this will be our third Sunday after we launched the 9:00 service, and we put a lot in. We put a lot into that, and this is kind of maybe we should treat this as kind of a halftime for ourselves, and talk about if there's adjustments that we should make, but also more importantly, I think is it gets things like when you start something or you play a game or whatever, when you realize it's a longer road, it's hard, and you need to take time to step back and say, okay, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? But also, how can we keep being motivated? How can we keep focusing on and enjoying what we're doing. 'Cause
it's so easy to get discouraged.
Yeah.
But if Jesus is sitting at our table, I think we're going to be just fine.
If we can just remind ourselves of that, yes, exactly. And I think we definitely will be fine.
Well, we hope that you have an awesome conversation after this, and we look forward to hearing about it.